Because Star Wars sort of says, this is a heroic tale, this is a heroic tale, this is a heroic tale, this is a heroic tale.
It doesn't hear it out of that piece. It was so much better instrumental.
Hello and welcome to the QUACKCAST. This is the Drunk Duck QUACKCAST. I'm Ozone Ocean, and with me is Tance and Baines. Hi guys.
Hello.
Hey.
Da 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 da.
Notice how I am not singing along because
You don't know
I'm not
what
falling
that
for
is.
that again.
You don't know what that's from, do you, Tance?
No,
You got
that's
no.
a tune I've never heard before.
Well, in this QUACKCAST, we're going to continue our thing for the month of August, which is talking about movie franchises where there's
Or
more
the
than one
month
film.
of October.
Oh, yeah, October.
August.
You're right. August is dead and gone a long time ago. We're on
Yes.
October, and yeah, so we're talking about movie franchises. Last week we talked about Indiana
It's as dead as the
Jones.
fandom goodwill towards Star Wars.
Well, we'll get to that later. We talked about Indiana Jones last week, and now we're talking about another Lucas vehicle, which is Star Wars, which is an amazing series of 3 initial films, and then some other ones afterwards.
And then nothing else.
Nothing.
But those
3 good films, and then, yeah, some other stuff. But before we get into that, I have to talk about the featured comic. QUACKCAST gave us a lovely feature this week. It looks like a Mobius. I always think of it as Morbius, but apparently it's Moebius. I don't know. Yeah, the French guy. It looks like his work, but it's not. It's by a genius artist on Drunk Duck, and Kwai is going to tell you about Interstellar Dust.
Hello, this is QUACKCAST, and the feature I've selected for this week is Interstellar Dust by Warn Everyone Comics, and it is rated M for mature. Welcome to this intergalactic prison filled with a wide range of creatures and prisoners committed to serving time and space. Each inmate, including a rocket-pack hotshot, a street-brawling young man, and a law-breaking exotic kitty lady dancer, spends their time thinking back to the exact moment that landed them in prison. Interstellar Dust is created by the collaborative duo CJ Hudson and Igor Wolski. Each page delivers a fully digital colored masterpiece. This is definitely a comic that displays great mechanical designs and detailed backgrounds. Break away from the prisoner transport cells and read Interstellar Dust by Warn Everyone Comics, rated M.
And that was our featured comic, Interstellar Dust. Thank you for that, Kawaii. Right, after that we have the featured music that Gun Wallace has given us this week for our QUACKCAST, and it's called The Shootin'. The Shootin'. So, exactly, Shootin'. Futuristic down-home country. Echoes of Journey of the Sorcerer by the Eagles. This track brings to mind figures relaxing around a warm, cheery campfire, lit by its feeble orange glow as they marvel at the vastness of the star-filled blackness above them. So, take it away, Gun Wallace, with The Shootin'. And that was Gum Wallace's theme music to The Shootin', which is a comic by Aerobicides. By Aboricides? I'm not sure. Aboricides. I can't pronounce people's names. Rated E. So have a look at it. It's a good little comic about a massacre in the Old West. Okay, guys, Star Wars. We've all seen it. We have? No?
Some of it.
How much of
I don't know what you're talking about. I have never experienced those wars of, celestial bodies.
Among the stars.
The battle for the planets. The
Yes.
battle beyond the stars.
No, actually, technically, stars are not celestial bodies, are they?
They are. Because Celestine, that's space,
Yeah.
and their bodies in space. So they would be.
No, I seem to remember very vaguely that there was this categorization of planets as celestial something, that stars were not. Anyway, whatever.
Well, I think initially there was some kind of, so celestial bodies was just referring to the planets in our solar system, but I can't be sure. Maybe that's all rubbish.
That's what the Star Wars was about, the fight between the planets and the stars. There you go.
Precisely. And we must of course mention that this theme tune I was alluding to is I think I was alluding to it somewhere. It's by John Williams, of course, the famous composer.
Mm-hmm.
And he based it, well, some of that music at least was based on Holst's The Planets, which is the famous music about the planets in our solar system. Jupiter, Mars, Saturn. And, of course, you'll all remember the awesome theme for the Empire.
Yes.
Which was completely based on Mars by Holst. So if you ever listen to Mars by Holst, it's even better than John Williams' Imperial March.
You should link to these things when we upload this cast.
Oh, I will. I'll do a YouTube link. I'm sure a lot of people have done versions of the Holst's The Planets. Right. So why is Star Wars such an iconic franchise? Why? Well, I think that's pretty obvious. I don't think there's much of a mystery about that. I would say it's an iconic franchise because it came out in the late 1970s. It was unlike anything that had been done. It redefined the genre of science fantasy or science fiction. And yes, of course, it had the lightsabers. It mixed in a whole lot of really clever stuff. So you've got the old classic space opera, which was Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers. So it took stuff from there. It took dogfights from World War II movies. So you've got the imagery of like fighter planes, launching off aircraft carriers and fighting the Japanese fighter planes. That's where that came from. You've got samurai warriors. That's where the whole sword fights comes in. Sort of samurai, sort of knights, but really it's more based on Japanese stuff. So we've got all that kind of stuff. We have stuff from World War II movies, like with the ranks and ranks of the Nazis all looking very correct and sleek and sexy in their gear, which is what the stormtroopers are. That sexy
and especially the helmet shape was very like a direct reference to that.
Yeah, the helmets are sort of shaped like the Stahlhelm, which is the famous Nazi, became known as the famous Nazi stormtrooper helmet, although clever people among us, people like Bravo, will say, that actually came from World War One and even before, but, that was noted in World War
Came
II.
from the Romans. The Romans were the first ones to have that shape.
It's quite similar, to the
Roman
Roman
shape,
standardized helmet, with the tail at the back and various devices, and that helmet, being super nerdy here, but that helmet became known as a Sallet, and was very popular in Germany in the as the style of the Gothic helmets in about the 14th, 15th century, and it got exported to other countries like Italy, England, France, all over the place. And and the Nazis directly reference that in a lot of their propaganda artwork, because they have, they relate themselves as being knights. So, oh my God, so imagery is a very important thing, and that is why, Lucas, as Tance, you mentioned it, brought those helmets in, because they have that reference to Nazism and symbols of fascism, stuff like that.
And I do talk about it a little more in the video for our Patreon. And the other thing I want to say is that, combined with the very powerful imagery that is just, very well translated into this science fiction world that is supposed to be completely alien to us, but with these little cues of imagery, we already feel like we know this world. So people are already very much at ease with it. They don't need to really learn it, because you have all these cues, the evil empire, Nazis style, proud knight, fair lady on the other side. You have the honorable samurai style knights.
Damsel in distress.
Yes, you have the dancer, help me, or Bianca not be. Now, there we go, our damsel, and now they will need to be rescued and everything. So you immerse yourself very easily, because the novelty isn't in the content, it is in the packaging more than anything.
Yeah.
Yes. And just one little thing is that even the plot is very much your traditional knight's fairy tale of having the hero journey of like Knights of the Round Table and Arthurian legend level stuff, just converted for science fiction, one way or the other.
They even have swords, laser swords. Well, they are not laser swords, but they look like that. It's a good description for them. So the lightsaber, which is super iconic, and another amazing. Everything was amazing about the film. It's as you say, Tons, it strikes all those cultural beats that we're all familiar with and all know and all can understand and get into very easily, and it strikes all of them, as well as introducing lots of iconic imagery, which is, fantastic. The Dark Lord, all dressed in black. The his identically outfitted armored minions. The good guys looking very vulnerable, or the bad guys are all faceless.
They are dressed more or less like you would expect resistance to dress, in the sense that they are scruffy, motley. Their outfits are pieced together from different costumes, let's say, because they have picked up what they could. They didn't just get fitted with it, like in the Empire. So there's also that, like, they have this feeling of the underdog.
And
please go.
I was going to say,
and
it's very intent, like you say, and it's done that way, and it's very intelligently thought out, in that the outfits they're wearing, sort of like remnants of uniforms from an older time. So this isn't stuff they've just picked up on a scrap heap. These are older uniforms, and they've seen better days. So that means they came from some kind of political system that's been overthrown, and they point to that earlier kind of kingdom, which is no longer in power now, because
And the whole introduction to Leia is very, very, again, iconic and very archetypical, I would say. She, even from what she's wearing, we are introduced to her wearing all white, and it is very much like robes and
A priestess almost.
like a priestess, yes. So she has this feeling of purity that she projects. She's definitely the good on the good guy in the objective, the one that gives the mission, basically.
Yeah.
That's who she is. She is the lady at the tower, waiting to be rescued in a way.
Yeah.
Yes, for at least for the first bit of the movie, and then you get a bit of a subversion on that because she is also very dynamic when she does get found. She is not terrified of her situation. She is defiant to Darth Vader. She might even have been tortured, but we don't see it. It's off camera, and clearly she held out. And then she has all this, gunfighting spunk in her. And I'm just talking about the first movie right now, before we got more episodes of her, let's say, in development. So she is classical enough to immediately get the story going in terms of her mission in the first half. But then she becomes also very interesting because she doesn't just she's not being hauled around by the guys.
Yes, she is someone who is very forthright, and she's not a reactive character, which is too often female characters fall into. I mean, even the female characters, I think, in the Indiana Jones film are more Indiana Jones franchise tend to be a bit more reactive, at least in the the first couple of films. She is more a proactive classical character. She doesn't do as much as the guys do, but she almost does. She does a lot.
But she does very important things for the plot. Like, she literally is the one that takes the initiative and starts the plot, because she sends away the droids, the message, and that was her initiative. She did it. And so yes, she is in a tough spot and she can't really react more than this, but she has done all she could and sent out the message as best she could. And this is the domino that starts the rest of the plot. So the guys are reacting to her message and to her call.
Yeah, right. Exactly. She is the main driver. But before we get too much into just describing the first film, let's talk about the franchise, which is the theme of this month of October. So what do you feel about the franchise? I mean, at least like the initial trilogy, which is where it all started. I think that was quite an interesting thing. I mean, it has a very good structure. The first one gives you an introduction. The second one gives you the devastation. And the third film gives you, elation. Everything's solved. It's a heroic celebration. So that's just a nice little structure there. So yeah, and it's a very beautifully self-contained trilogy. It really didn't need anything else, but of course, these things are amazingly influential cultural touchstones. So they've done, much more. Starting with, I think, the Christmas episode, which was a special made-for-TV thing and quite nasty. And then I think the next ones after that were the 2 Ewok films that were made. Caravan of Courage and another one I can't remember. Battle for Endor or something like this. It's quite good kids films. Yeah. But not many people really remember those as Star Wars films because there's not too much Star Wars about them. they're more fantasy.
Could say they are spin-offs that just happen to be happening in the Star Wars universe, in a sense, more than anything. Because
Well, yeah, they are, but you're still Star Wars films. And then we have like I think some animation things followed, droids, stuff like this, and then everything dried up for a while. What's that?
You have the Clone Wars.
Oh well,
which was
I was going to get into that a bit later.
Oh, okay.
But what I'm trying to say, so that happened like in the early 80s, like the late 70s, and that was the franchise, and then it sort of dried up. Really didn't have too much more. Then in the 1990s we have the Jar Jar Binks trilogy, we'll call it, and that gave rise to the Clone Wars cartoon. So the Jar Jar Binks films people didn't like so much because, you know, obvious reasons, they were very poorly written. Everything, they weren't universally bad. The costumes, the sets, the design of things, production design, the effects, everything like that was top notch. It was let down by, you know, an objectively bad story. And we used the first trilogy as an example of something that is well plotted, cleverly done. Well, not a clever thing, but cleverly done as a kind of sleek hero's journey and a classic hero's journey. We use the Jar Jar Binks trilogy as an example of something that ignores all the proper plot points and the proper structure, and does everything badly. It's a good example of how not to do things. Now, and then we have, of course, the Clone Wars cartoons, which came about because of the films. Then we had the this latest stuff. So now we've got another trilogy happening, and Rogue One and Solo, which were two standalone films, which some people love and some people hate. They sort of have an extreme, separation of views, whatever you call it. So yeah, we've come a long way, but that was like an explosion that started in the 1990s, died off, and then is happening again. So
I think,
go on.
Yeah, it's like the ebbing and flowing of Star Wars. But I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that when the first movie of the new trilogy hit, and I don't remember exactly the title right now.
The Force Awakens?
Okay, yes, thank you. People weren't actually hating it, as far as I remember. I remember that
Not
there
at
was
all. I don't think so, yeah.
Yes, I remember that there was excitement that, okay, now we have reset from the Jar Jar Binks horror fest, and now, okay, we have been shown that a Star Wars film that has the atmosphere of Star Wars and treats itself like a Star Wars movie can be made again. And that was why it was so much a connected dots first Star Wars movie, so to speak. It was very much a direct analogy between New Hope and A Force Awakens. And people didn't mind that because they, as far as I recall, that's how they took it, like a new promise. That, okay, here you go. We just made you an actual Star Wars movie, and from now on, only good things are coming.
Oh yeah.
So people, and then the Star Wars story, the one with Darth Vader in the end. Oh my God, what's happened? I have completely forgotten all the titles.
Rogue One.
Yes.
Star Wars story. Yeah.
Again, it was a hit. It was a big hit and people liked it. Although it was about characters that were just introduced and then they, spoiler, die at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that there was hate in the beginning, or at least that there was that much controversy over it. I think people
I wonder
were...
how much people were talking about problems with The Force Awakens after it came out. I mean, I in my recollection, you're totally right about when it initially came out, it got nothing but positive reactions.
The people that did have some criticisms were explaining the criticism away from all the reviews, because I do watch reviews ravenously for many reasons of movies. So what I saw was that they were acknowledging that, okay, this part here has some issues, or this part there has some issues, or we cannot understand why they made this choice or that choice. But that was the second part of the sentence. We think that this is going to be explained on the next movie, or we think that this is going to be like this is a callback to the original and they did it like this, blah, blah, blah. So, yes.
It's like we're setting the table, so any problems you had, this is kind of what you just said, I'll repeat it. People were like, okay, well, it just has to be explained, you know? Like it's going to be explained more deeply. Any questions you have are going to become clear in the next movie.
Yeah,
which wouldn't be, sorry, just one line. Wouldn't be unreasonable, because Star Wars does have a bit of a whole, mystery thing going. The original trilogy, did have some suspense. Okay, why is this happening? Or what is the relationship with these guys? Or, things like this. So it was reasonable to consider that, okay, you are setting up a few twists and turns along the way. And I'm on for the ride, so I'm going to roll with it and see where you take me with it.
I would say a lot of people must have had that. I would say that is pretty much how I felt, and that seemed to be kind of the sentiment.
I was just going to say, when I saw it, I loved a lot of the scenes. They had some fantastic scenes, and I think my impression was much like as you described. As I was watching, I was thinking, okay, this is some fantastic scenes. There's some things here that seem to be like, unnecessarily literal callbacks to the first film. But you explain it away in that, finally we're getting something much better than those Jar Jar Binks films. We're getting, a proper movie here. So, okay, I'll forgive some of this, some of the silliness that is just, in there because we're referencing the first film. And then I got to the end, and it wasn't until I'd sort of seen the whole thing and then had some time to think about it that I started to dislike it. But initially I did love, pretty much, I really liked it. And everything, these new characters like Finn and what's her name? Daisy something. Rey, that's it. Yeah, Rey's character, that was good, and Poe Dameron, and the new BB, whatever his name is. All these fantastic characters, except for the Darth Vader analog, whatever his name is. He's a bit of a dick. But yeah, everything seemed to be pretty good. Kylo Ren, yeah. But there were some lingering issues, yeah. Okay, I'll let you guys take the floor now.
I'll agree with that too, man. That's not, for sure. Like I mean, I was definitely carried along by the nostalgia of it, the pretty quick pace of it. The music, the characters that I was like, okay, I could see a friendship starting between Rey and Finn. I remember saying that was my favorite part of the movie. Great to see Han Solo, Chewbacca, Princess Leia again. It's like, okay. So I kind of told myself I liked it when I was in the theater. And I remember even saying directly after it that, I liked it. The people I was with were really excited. was like, yeah, okay, but and I was looking forward to having questions answered, so I stand by that. But I will say, even watching it, the one and only time I watched it, which tells you something right there. Normally, it's something I like, I'll watch it multiple times. I was like, not feeling. I was like, when the big moment happened with, Han Solo. Spoiler alert, dies. I was kind of sitting there like, why? Like, why do I not care about this? This is like my
exactly
favorite ever, and I'm still not sure totally why, but I haven't really analyzed it. But I'm like, why do I not care? Like, this should be like huge, but something's not adding up. Something's not ringing true pretty much from the beginning of the movie. But I really noticed it with Han Solo. Like, why isn't this like doing it for me emotionally? Kind of odd. And went on to think later about, like, man, like a lot of the stuff I was anticipating, like seeing Luke and Han Solo together and Leia together. Like, you never see it. You never see Luke interact with Han. It's like, wow, that's crazy. 30 years later, and they don't even give them a scene together. That's like crazy.
Or even a flashback. They could have given
exactly with the same story. Have a flashback. Yeah, for sure.
Well, flashback would be digital reconstruction, so it wouldn't be ideal.
Not necessarily. It depends on what.
Yeah,
you don't. They could have been relatively ripe.
Older. We could see when they split up. Yeah.
I have to say that I also saw it once, and although all the other, even the prequels, I have watched like a couple of times. For various reasons, I admit that. But I felt, I remember that the first few scenes, I was very excited, seeing Rey being, the dust rat, basically, and, becoming the new Luke Skywalker and blah, blah. But then I felt immeasurably bored. I realized at some point that I was so bored that I was surprised by it. I was very bored in the movie. Like, right around the middle, like, there was nothing in there that was keeping me interested.
Really?
For some.
Wow.
Yeah. I think right after the Poe and the other guy,
Finn.
Finn, yes. They sort of find it. They don't find each other. I think when the robot goes to Finn's jacket, that is Poe's, and yeah, from that point onwards, I was bored beyond my mind. But at the same time, and that was a weird effect, I was intrigued by some of the plot points and plot assumptions. Like, okay, so this Finn is probably going to go back and infiltrate the Empire again, or they're going to use him somehow, and it's significant that he is an ex-stormtrooper.
Yeah.
Or there will be, or maybe he will be a turncoat because for whatever reason, he feels guilty to his old buddies, or he is going to be significant in some way with the Empire. So that was the one thing. The other thing was, okay, who are her parents and why has she been dropped in this, edge of the world that is very much like Tatooine? And, when is the conflagration happening? So there's that. And, but then again, like in the whole Kylo Ren thing, okay, we're going to see in flashbacks how Luke progressively became paranoid for something, like something else is happening. Maybe he is being attacked by the dark side of the Force, and that's why he was being this erratic with his. Like, I had all these possible scenarios in my mind that would make this thing coherent and perhaps interesting.
Yeah, answering your questions. Yeah, your questions that you had and coming up with.
So I was interested while being bored, which is a very weird situation to be in.
Yeah. That's well put. And you know what? Let me say this too. Okay. Like, even like stuff like, where did this new empire come from? It felt weird. Like from the beginning, it felt weird. It's like, wait, we never saw the victory. I mean, not that you have an entire movie where everything's great. Of course, there's going to be problems and everything.
Conflict,
but it's like the whole original trilogy didn't matter. It all fell apart off screen. It's like that was weird from the beginning. It came into focus for me later once I had a chance to think about it.
All the way back to the Empire again, like reset button.
Yeah. And also, the other thing I'll say, I'll keep it quick, is like a lot of people said later how it was just a template of the original movie. They just copied the beats. And you saw that a lot, like they made Han Solo the Ben Kenobi mentor. There was sort of her journey. It was sort of copying, and then you had a super weapon they had to destroy and everything. That, copied beat for beat, but you didn't have the feeling of the freight train that the original story was, like where you're heading towards something. Save the princess, learn the Force, escape from the Death Star, destroy the Death Star, like these kind of this bullet kind of thing that's driving forward to something cohesive. Like it never, Force Awakens never feels like that.
Very good point. Very good point. It follows the template of the original film just because there's no reason for it. We go to this stupid cantina of, the reprobates for no reason really, just because that's what you're meant to do. She doesn't have to go there. The plot is so weak, and then we have this moment, and I hated this actually when I was watching it, even though I did overall enjoy it after my initial thing. But when she goes to that stupid cantina where there's no reason for it, and this alien that she meets is basically a stock standard American Southern black woman character, and I just thought, what the hell? Because in the initial trilogy,
of a Yoda.
Well, she's
even older.
Yeah, she's
now a woman of color.
She's older, but and she's got like that kind of caricature almost behavior of I'm this wise woman sort of character, whatever. I can't even remember how she was going, but she was sort of like that. And I thought, for goodness sake, this is Star Wars in like all through the films. When you have alien characters, they are actually alien. They're not just poorly animated 3D human characters based on caricatures of actual humans in bloody, southern states of America. That's just...
Yeah. Which was something the prequels were also very guilty of. Like, you had all kinds of stereotypes as aliens.
Oh, yeah, we had like... Jar Jar Binks character, of course.
The merchants, and Jar Jar, and there were various...
But funnily enough, those were better than this character because at least they were alien. I mean, even if they weren't too alien, they were more alien than this character, which was just completely, the stereotype of this wise woman of color telling you, oh, for goodness sake, don't do that, At least, if you're going to have a wise woman of color, actually make her a real woman. Don't give us, an alien that just happens to be exactly like that. That was really badly done, and that immediately, because she didn't actually have to go to that cantina thing, and we just went on from there.
Right.
Like you said, it's the template of the original film, but for no point. We're just hitting all those points because we have to, not because it means anything to the story. It doesn't drive it forward. We're just doing it because we have to. Yeah.
It struck me too as really weird that they would have a super weapon like the Death Star, but because the first movie destroys it in the first movie, they do the same thing. It was odd to me because it's like, well, this time you're doing a trilogy. George Lucas didn't know he'd be able to do part 2 and part 3 at the time.
Yeah. It was a self-contained
film.
film.
Why do you destroy the super weapon now?
Yeah.
In the
And
first
also,
one,
like,
you already know part 2, part 3 is already a go.
yeah. And there's another thing. Okay, so you're gonna have a Death Star again. Okay, fine. And it's gonna be bigger,
Yeah.
bigger. Okay, so go
It
actually.
destroys 5 planets instead of 1.
Oh.
Yeah.
Same
So
time, yeah.
you know what? This time, go big. Make it a planet. That's like a constructed planet with its own frigging orbit or whatever, and maybe it doesn't do just the whole cannon thing, like shooting a cannon, but maybe the orbit is the bigger issue, because wherever it is, it destroys the orbit of all the other planets, and they might even get out of their solar systems or whatever. Like, make something new and make it harder, like, because it has this whole weird magnetic field around it or whatever, make it very hard to approach because of physics.
Yeah.
So,
have a bit of real physics in there. Well, what did they do in this film? Okay, so they had the Death Star in this film is a base on a planet where they suck the energy from the sun until the sun collapses and turns into a black hole. And the energy weapon they do is, like you say, 5 planets. But it doesn't make any sense. Okay, so in the original you have the Death Star, and I think it can actually travel through space. Like, it warps into new positions, so it can laser these planets with this, like, incredible weapon that travels super fast, Whereas this one just is a base on a planet, sucking energy from a star, so it can't move, can't go anywhere, and it fires these super slow bolts of energy. They go... And if you're thinking about physics for 5 seconds, that would take those bolts of energy several years to reach those planets. That wouldn't happen. You fire those bolts, all those people on those planets are going to have way more than enough time to escape, because you can't travel faster than the speed of light. I mean, you can in these films in that you can, go at warp speed. But this energy isn't going at warp speed. It's just, you can see how fast it's going because they show you. It's going, arcing away, slowly, slowly, slowly. So, that is a massive, ridiculous hole there. How does this stuff travel at walking speed 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 light years to another planet out there? How does that happen? And no one knows it's coming and they all die. That just didn't make any sense to me at all.
Right.
It's just like, why aren't people's heads exploding over this? What the hell? This is stupid.
And going back also to the whole New Order thing, I would be more interested. Like, I understand that they were trying to do the call back to the original and stuff. But it makes, as you said, it makes no sense. What would have made more sense would be to go and do what I said in the beginning, like catch the bit of something that did affect this era, just as World War II had the previous one, and they could have this New Order, quote unquote, be a lot more like ISIS than
rebels rather Nazis. Than. Yeah, they would be the rebels. They would be the terrorists rather than...
Yes, and this time, exactly. And this time, the tables would be turned in a way. And also, maybe it would be easier to explain why Kylo Ren, who, spoiler, is the son of Luke and Leia... no, not Luke and Leia. Han Solo and...
That's what they should have done. Take a risk.
That would explain a lot. Why he becomes radicalized. And he leaves his family with no real reasoning behind it, and he becomes like this icon of these...
the very of them.
yes, the mascot of these very radicalized, very fanaticized weirdos. And they could even be a whole sect of rogue Jedis or something like this.
Yeah, well,
so
whatever.
Because they are very much, to go with the whole religious streak, if you would like. So the thing is that I think they went at it a little too fast, and they didn't sit down to think about how to implement the concepts that they wanted to call back on. Because you want to call back on a concept doesn't mean that you have to do it exactly as it was done in the original. You just need to have the same kind of element, let's say, in it.
Yeah, you have the spirit of it. You have the running, the shooting, the jumping, the daring, and the vibe of action and fun without literally copying the beats.
And have it still make sense. I mean, one of the silly defenses people make of this thing is they say, "Oh, you're complaining that it's it's too much the same as the original, whereas you didn't like the other ones because they were completely different. The original, make up your minds." But that's just stupid kind of behavior. It's no good if something is the same as the original for no logical reason. The original was structured in a way because there was an internal logic and it was a consistency. Things made sense within that world. Just putting that template onto this new story doesn't make any sense. There's no, real internal logic in this world. This world is broken logically. There's in so many ways.
It's like zero thought was given to.
Yeah. And that's the other thing. And that's not even mentioning the whole premise, like the defense of the movie, that, if you don't like it, you are so-and-so ist, whatever ist.
I think that really came to play with The Last Jedi.
That went really heavily into the Last Jedi thing. But we have already, we haven't even addressed Rey, around who this whole debate of whether you like it or don't like it because of her is the issue. Even if she was a normal character, and I'm not saying a good character, just a normal one, you would have so many problems in this concept that again it would fall through.
Yeah, the whole thing with Rey. Okay, so there's a lot of people saying, if you don't like Rey, you're obviously, an incel or something like this. You've got some problems with women. So that's just silliness. I mean, there were people who hated her because she was a woman. There were that kind of incel kind of people, idiots. But so Rey does have problems in that, she's a bit of a Mary Sue. She automatically knows how to fight. She automatically sort of just falls into being, a super trained sword fighter without ever touching a sword before and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. So definitely there is that. Although, apart from that, she's a good, compelling character. You like Rey. Her reactions to things, are pretty good. When she's fighting and all this in the start of the film. When you're introduced to her, she's not a repellent character. You don't react to her as the Mary Sue in that kind of, she's too perfect, I hate her. She's a if it wasn't for that, the Mary Sue-ishness and just being the chosen one in more ways than Luke was, far more ways than Luke was. Because Luke didn't know how to sword fight in the first film. I don't think he did any sword fighting in the first film. Until it wasn't until the second film.
No, he didn't.
Yeah, he
didn't
actually trained. Yeah. But if it wasn't for that stuff, Rey would be perfectly okay. I mean,
yes,
there's nothing really wrong with her as a character. It's just that falling into everything and being that Mary Sue-ishness. That's the problem.
Now that you mention it, and you're absolutely right, now that you mention it, when we first meet her, she comes across as very street savvy and sort of independent, but independent by necessity more than anything else. Like she has to because she needs to survive. She's not. She's a product of her setting in a sense. And then, so you expect you want her to, to be force sensitive. You want her to become the new upcoming, very promising, acolyte.
Yeah.
I don't want to say Padawan. You want her to be slowly immersed in this world of space knights and space wizards along with you. And that's, I think, where the problem lies, now that you mentioned it, that she is immediately there and we're still on the other side of the ocean. So we haven't really watched her go through a journey of any kind. And we are not even allowed on the jet ski with her. Like, and I mean that if we had some kind of explanation, like, okay, if she were surprised, like, why am I so good with a sword, with a lightsaber?
Yeah.
Like, if she was creeped out with herself, and maybe she didn't want to touch the lightsaber again because, it's like something takes control of her and does things that she has never learned.
Exactly. Then maybe she was. Yeah, maybe she was possessed. Maybe the Force was, controlling her in some way, and that would have been a great element. That would have been a new aspect to the Force. We already know that Obi-Wan is like more powerful than you could ever imagine. He becomes part of it. Maybe,
could be him.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it could be the Force incarnate taking over her, and that would be so cool. But no, that's just
and maybe she had like this love-hate relationship with the Force. Like, how dare you, take over me and use me as your puppet, in a sense. So that would have been very interesting. But I just brought it up as an example of if we are if it's acknowledged that it is unnatural for her to be skilled when she hasn't learned something, or for her to be aware when she shouldn't be immediately aware, then people would roll with it. Even in The Last Jedi, I think she wouldn't be the butt of every joke.
Yeah, and I mean, there's no getting around it. If they set up the character Kylo Ren, who is like, carrying on from the legacy of the space Nazis in the old days. He's got a sword. He obviously knows how to fight because he's been a Sith Lord for a long time. He has a master there. He's not going to get beaten by someone who is, their first time. That sort of takes away that takes away your internal logic and the consistency of the story, because already
makes him also like an incompetent. Like you imagine if in the Rogue One film, Darth Vader was overwhelmed by the resistance, and the resistance made the clean getaway. He would lose cool.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
but now that you mentioned Kylo Ren, sorry, please go on, because then I will launch into another set of.
I was just going to say, well, like if we're talking about the franchise, then we can talk about Rogue One, which was so Rogue One. The idea behind that is sort of like that was the prequel we deserved, rather than the Jar Jar Binks trilogy, because we have what happened immediately before the first Star Wars film. So we've got the plans being stolen for the Death Star, so they knew how to blow it up because the architect released it, and these people got the plans, they stole them, and they gave them to Princess Leia, who then put them in R2-D2, who then jumped over onto Tatooine with C-3PO. So, yeah, that was a very important film because of that. People look at it as being, oh, it's just a standalone film, blah, blah, blah. But it's not really. It's not having its own trilogy, but it is immediately before the first Star Wars film. So it becomes more of a franchise film, more of a carry-on film than most of the others. Certainly more than the Jar Jar Binks trilogy. Don't you think? It is a solid part of the franchise. Oh, go on, sorry.
No, I would agree with you. I would agree with you on that. And Rogue One, again, wasn't a perfect film, but it was consistent enough that you don't really care.
Yeah.
So the other thing that I was going to say, and I have to, or I will burst, is the whole Kylo Ren. Because I cannot buy at all that he would want to continue Darth Vader's legacy. And there's one very specific reason why. Because he turned back to the light side just before he died. Mm-hmm. And that was a big thing. And he has a Force ghost now. And it's almost a given that someone as Force sensitive as Kylo Ren would have seen that Force ghost, or at least felt that Force ghost. And he would have heard the story. I mean, haven't you heard stories about, awesome stuff your grandfathers or grandmothers did, or, the family legends. Everyone has some episodes, whether, glorious or, more everyday stuff that is very awesome. Everyone has heard their family legends. And you cannot convince me that Luke would have said, oh my God, your grandfather was this awesome Sith Lord. Okay.
Yeah.
He would have said,
around Kylo Ren would have said that,
Exactly. He would have grown up knowing his grandfather as this man that managed to beat the highest allure of the dark side. He beat it. And he actually is the one that defeated the Emperor, not Luke.
Yes. So it doesn't make sense for him to be worshipping this beaten up old helmet as if, oh yes, I should follow your legacy, because that's not his legacy.
That would have made sense only if in the last movie of the original trilogy, Darth Vader hadn't turned and Luke had been forced in some way to end him, or he had died for whatever reason without turning, as villains do in certain other franchises and stuff. So if he hadn't and he had ended his life as a Sith, then maybe you could have our son was a weirdo and he liked the weirdo grandfather, and he dug up whatever there was to know about him, and he was open to the dark side of the Force, and there you have it. But that's very important when he died.
Yeah, because like you said, his legacy isn't anything to do with the evil and the dark side and the the Empire. Because for a start, he didn't build the Empire. He was a functionary. He was always a functionary. He was always a minor character in it. So he had nothing to do with that. And in the end, he redeemed himself, which was his greatest achievement there. He absolutely, like you again said. But so it makes absolutely no sense that veneration would have happened. strikes me more
My
and more.
My parents are so lame and boring.
It strikes...
They make me eat my vegetables. They make me clean my room.
They take my vaping away.
Like my grandfather did.
Yeah.
It strikes me more and more that the people who wrote The Force Awakens only saw the original film or the original trilogy like once and barely remembered it, and then wrote.
It had blue lightning out of an old man's fingers. Like, how much can you forget about that?
Yeah.
Oh, but yeah, I think that was a bigger issue, and of course the whole distorting of old characters and how they would react again goes against logic. Again, it just doesn't take you on a board on whatever jet ski took them there. So of course you will not accept it. Of course you will not like it, because it goes against logic. It has nothing to do with whatever it is you believe. And without yet having seen the Joker, and I want to go see it, from what I have seen in terms of reactions, you have a severe rewriting and even going against the grain for what Joker was in the comics, but people still like it because it has a very high level of internal validity and confusion.
Right.
Exactly. Well, and people make this stupid argument that, oh, it's just a film, or, oh, it's, it's science fiction, it's fantasy, you've got to, like, have suspension of disbelief, or, you can't take it seriously, whatever. But the reason science fiction works, or fantasy works, is because it's so well constructed that it has a logical consistency. So these weird, fantastical, magical things make sense within that world, and that story structure makes sense within the world. It builds on itself, and it has to be fantasy and to be enjoyable, or else it breaks you out of the suspension of disbelief and absolutely doesn't work. So that argument that, it's science fiction or it's fantasy, except that is said by, but that is said by people who are, I wouldn't even say they're not ignorant, they're just stupid. They don't understand stories. They shouldn't be commenting on stories because they don't know what it means.
I wouldn't even say that. I just think that they don't actually care in this particular situation about the content of the story and the franchise. They don't have any skin in the game, in the sense that they are not fans and they are not actually invested. They don't know the lore, they don't know the background, they don't know the rules.
Yeah, I agree with you there. But even to say those things about, it doesn't matter if you don't care about the fandom or what happens in this particular film, but if you understand anything about story and fantasy or whatever, you can't say that about any film, no matter how much stake you have in it, because that applies to every single film. The more suspension of disbelief a film needs, every film needs some suspension of disbelief, but the more a film needs, the more it needs to retain logical internal consistency and justifications for actions and doing things, or it breaks you out of suspension of disbelief, and it starts to make the film not as enjoyable and not as immersive. And that applies universally. There's no...
I would also be a little cynical and say that people that do say, it's just a film, or it's not for you, that's another thing. You old dinosaur or whatever. Or you are just posing as a woman. You're not a woman and you are an incel. I've heard about these things. I think they do
You've
that.
Had that said to you?
Yeah.
Or you've seen it said? Oh, really? Yeah.
That I was a man posing as a woman.
Wow.
Well, you do a very impressive job, Tance. I've met you in person, and I couldn't tell the difference. Seriously.
I'm a master of disguise. That's why. So anyway, I think they do that when they don't have counter arguments. So it's their way of flipping the table to go back to our speakeasy. So yeah.
Oh, good point. Well, we should wrap this up now because I think we're about a few minutes over the time. This has been
there's a whole discussion to be had about what happened after The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi when things really went crazy.
Oh, yeah.
You have the interaction of the company with the fans. And I mean, the people you're talking about who kind of are carrying water in a way. I mean, that would be... I don't know if that's fair or not, but like a lot of times, like people are carrying water for the company who's using these excuses. Like if you criticize our movie, you're this or you're that, or you're you're a cave dweller. You know, this is progress, and you're like, you just
that's
hate women.
Cave dwellers, by the way. Cave dweller phobic.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's an entire story, and I mean, if you're like, I think a lot of people have been following this online. Whenever we do a news post, one of us about Star Wars, there's always a big response. And you go on YouTube, and this is an industry now of dissecting everything that's happened since The Last Jedi came out and the behavior of the company towards fans online and everything. It's crazy. It's a crazy, crazy time. A massive subject. And pretty fascinating.
Yeah, this is almost like really like it should be a two-part almost because there's a lot more to talk about.
Go into all that next time, maybe.
They're fun, yeah. Well, perhaps we could. There's so much, and we didn't even get into Solo either. You know, it's fun to talk about these things.
We could do that.
All right, so we might get into that. And I just had to laugh about your cave dweller because I think that's what people, Tatooine, which was of course based on a real place in sub-Saharan Africa, and I think Matmata, place in Tunisia, was sort of used as the base, and I think people from that area were actually called troglodytes. Wow.
Oh, really?
Which means cave dweller. Yeah. So I thought that was a nice little irony. So original Star Wars people were troglodytes, cave dwellers.
So could we be called?
Well, that's when I made that joke. That's what I was getting at.
We could be called Aboriginals or First Nations. And it's going to be very, very weird if you go against us now.
Oh, God.
Exactly.
That's a whole kettle of fish.
Yeah.
A whole nother kettle of fish.
It is. I mean, there's so much going on right now.
Well,
in culture and everything, it's amazing.
Yeah, culture has moved on a lot from what it was in the 1970s when this trilogy was conceived. And that has had to influence the new films, and we'll talk about that because there is a very big part of that in Solo, and it's not handled as well as it should be. So it'd be interesting to talk about that. Okay, so we'll talk about this next week then. All right, thank you guys.
Thank you.
May the Force be with you,
and also with you.
It feels weird. Say it after.
May the Force be with you, yes.
And also with you.
All
right, bye-bye.
Bye.